It's good to have so many people here again. That's great. Okay, so welcome, welcome. First of all, if this is your first meeting or first time at Indivisible, please raise your hand. Great, great, great. Awesome. Woo-woo. Welcome, welcome. Now, all of these candidates that we're talking about tonight, you will be getting in the next week a special mailing from us into your email box. And it's going to be Indivisible Huron Valley's recommended candidates. Remember, we don't endorse, but we do recommend to our members who they might vote for. And we put a stress on the nonpartisan part of the ballot because it can be a little confusing for a lot of voters. So that's really what that's all about. We know that you're going to vote your conscience. You're going to vote any way you want. But we do want to recommend certain people to help you along. Also, there are two other names that we really need to remember and make sure we vote for just as vigorously. And that's Pamela Pugh and Mitchell Robinson. We have two people running for the Michigan Board of Education, the State Board of Education. And that's really going to be an important place to vote. And so we really need to make sure that we get those names in our heads and make sure that they are elected. So we know that the Michigan judiciary is a hierarchy. We understand the Supreme Court is at the top, but we might be a little bit confused about what's under that. Is Amanda here?
So just so you know, Sharon,
Yeah.
Amanda, Pamela, and Joseph did not check in.
Okay, all right. We're going to turn this thing all the way upside down tonight. So these are people actually that are coming from out of town, which is why, and we know what the roads are looking like. She's fixing the damn roads. Okay, let's just put it that way. And so we know what the traffic's like. We know that it's especially at this time of night. So we'll hopefully they'll get here, but they did RSVP that they would be here. Okay, so we're going to get right to it and start talking about Board of Education elections. I'm going to skip down. Susie Crafton couldn't make it tonight. She's running for Walled Lake Schools Board of Education. She will be here next month. We will be putting her on our recommended list of candidates for those of you. Would you raise your hand if you're in the Walled Lake Schools? I want to get an idea how many people live in Walled Lake Schools. Okay, so Janet's going to be putting together a special postcard party for people who lived in the Walled Lake School District. Becky Spagnuolo was here last month. You heard from her. And she's the other candidate that we're recommending for Walled Lake Schools. We're all aware that new district lines were drawn after the 2018 redistricting. And one of the new districts is House District 49. And Christina Kafkakis is here. She's running for that office. And I'm going to let her describe exactly which towns involved. And most of us here won't be able to vote for her. However, she is one of the House districts that has the potential to flip blue. And so it's very important that we pay attention to this district and this race and do what we can long distance. And it's really not long distance at all. She's in it's a new district right next to ours. But if we can contact friends and people we know that live in that district, maybe make some phone calls for her, do a little door to door, because it really isn't far once in a while. That would be very, very helpful. Or if she has postcards, help her with that. But I wanted her to be here tonight because it's such an important race. And also, quite honestly, I've heard her speak, and she has the most fascinating story. So I want her to be here to tell about it because it's sort of a great story that we all should hear. Christina.
I have some notes because I tend to get a little nervous, and I'm Italian, even though my name looks Greek. So I go off on tangents a lot. Sorry about that. So my name is Christina Kafkakis, and I'm running in the newly drawn House District 49. It includes Brighton Township, where I live, the city of Brighton, Green Oak Township, parts of Lyon Township, Commerce, Novi, and all of Wixom and Walled Lake. Yeah. I'm actually running against an incumbent, which is something that everybody warned me about, and they told me, don't expect to win, and I said, you don't know me. So I'm ready to take on this job. At the top of my list is defending privacy in healthcare, including reproductive rights. One of the reasons why is because prior to having my living children, my husband and I were newlyweds, and we found ourselves unexpectedly pregnant with twins. And I had a complication arise where I was in the hospital, and they were trying to keep me pregnant. Unfortunately, we lost our first twin, and we were trying to save the second twin, and because of this complication, I ended up getting very ill. I was hours away from going into a coma is what the doctors told me. And the only way to solve this particular problem with pregnancy is to deliver. So for me, I always thought of myself as someone who would never terminate a pregnancy. I could never do that. I was raised Catholic. I could never do that. And then my husband and I found ourselves in this really unexpected situation where he had to choose, because I was delirious with fever and infection. Did he want to try to have another child with me, or did he want to try to save our not viable child that was still in utero? We decided to induce. We now have 4 living children. But when I run into people, when I'm knocking doors and they tell me that, they're pro-life, I ask, can you tell me why? And a lot of times they have a misunderstanding about who really gets abortions or has to terminate pregnancies. So I go into my story, and it's up to them to decide. It's up to them to decide whether or not, they can see our point of view. But I have had friends who have had ectopic pregnancies, 1 in 10. Numbers are even higher now with assisted reproduction. So they might listen to something like my story, where they might not listen to someone else's story. So that's why I bring it up. As I mentioned, I'm a mom to 4 amazing kids. They're all in public schools. I have one with an IEP and one with a 504 plan. They're probably the main reason why I'm doing this. During COVID, my husband lost his job. I'm a small business owner. We had to navigate this world of social benefits. And then we had our school district take away all COVID mitigation strategies. So I went into mama bear mode, and coming from, I have a degree in science from Michigan State, and knowing that taking away all the mitigation strategies was going to be a bad thing, I decided I was going to show them the data, because I have a child with an IEP, and you always have to look at the data. So I started screenshotting our COVID numbers in our district and neighboring districts. And then after I had this amazing graph that showed this huge spike, I sent it to the board. And I then became the target of the group known as Moms for Liberty. They went after my business. I had to shut down all comments and all reviews on my business page. I had to contact Google, because once you have a review on Google, it's very hard to remove a poor review on Google. They were making comments on my clients' photos that were politically motivated. So that just got me more fired up. And they made fun of my name at a board meeting, and they called me Kafkakis. So I made sure to put my name on Facebook in all caps so they would know how to spell it. A little bit more about me. I graduated from Michigan State, as I mentioned. I moved to the district with my husband over 20 years ago. We moved for the location. So it's interesting that I'm running in this district, because I actually lived in this district in Novi, in one of the precincts I have, in 2001. So I was working in the industry. My husband and I weren't married yet. He hadn't purchased the house yet that we resided in. And I am now door knocking where I used to live and shop, and it's very interesting. A lot more development than there was back then. I'm running because I've always encouraged my kids to be the change, and no one else, quite frankly, was willing to step up. I know that I have what it takes to be a good rep. I've been married for almost 17 years, and my husband is an introverted engineer. If I can get along with an introverted engineer, we have actually been together for 27 years this year. So, you know, a lot of people tell me they're tired of the divisiveness and they want people to get back to conversations. And I mention that to them and they laugh because they understand. Some of the things that are really important to me besides reproductive freedoms, public education is under attack right now. I don't know if you all know that my opponent wrote an op-ed in the Detroit News over the weekend. She was claiming teachers and school administrators are conspiring against parents. This goes right in line with her bill that she's so proud to have co-sponsored with Matt Maddock about gender and race stereotyping in school, which doesn't happen, and is a complete waste of taxpayer money. So she didn't even know the House bill number when I asked her. That she was so proud to have co-sponsored it. So sorry, I'm getting a little more aggressive in my campaign as things get along, further along. To give you a little background about where I came from before I moved to the district. So I was born and raised in Flint, Michigan. My grandpa was one of the original sit-down strikers. Unfortunately, he's not in any of the photos at Sloan Museum. I've looked. But we have the brick, and my dad worked for GM. He did not want to be a union worker. He went to GMI and got a job as a white-collar worker at GM. My brother is a die maker, retired. Tons of family members at GM, right? Born and raised in Flint, made it through despite Buick City falling and all that stuff. What my parents didn't realize was that by not having the protection of the union, my dad, who took early retirement, about 6 months before he reached 30 years, lost all his benefits during the restructuring. So my parents are in their 80s. My dad has COPD, started smoking at the age of 12. I don't recommend it. He did not think about that happening because it had been a constant in his life, right? Who would have thought they'd restructure and take away my insurance? So when they planned out their retirement, they planned to travel. They planned to enjoy life with grandkids. They didn't plan on budgeting for gap coverage and prescription coverage, right? And my mom's a diabetic, so I'm thankful that that got fixed. At least the insulin thing got taken care of. I really want people to know that I can get along with people that are different than me. I know a lot of people think that's funny to say, but I feel like if you're going to get anything done in the state legislature, you have to be willing to work with people who might not have the same opinion as you. The point is to try to find a way to make it work, right? To benefit everyone, or the majority, right? So for me, I feel like I was motivated to do this for many reasons. My parents, seeing my parents worry about whether or not they have enough retirement to live out the rest of their life has been very difficult. I'm the youngest, I'm the baby of 4 children. And, to see my parents worry about that kind of thing is just taking its toll on us. My oldest son being on the spectrum, well, when he was diagnosed, the autism therapies that are now covered in Michigan under insurance were not covered. So back in 2011, my husband and I had to file bankruptcy because we thought our $2,500 FAFSA, our FSA that we had would last so long, and it doesn't go very far when your therapy is $200 a half hour 3 times a week. And so we just kept charging it, thinking that we'd pay it off with this bonus, and then the recession happened, and so my husband got furloughed. So we found ourselves in a very tricky situation. Thankfully, the state of Michigan legislature realized so many families were going through what my family went through, and they changed the coverages with insurance to include autism therapies, including the most expensive ones, and that happened after our bankruptcy took place. So I'm glad that they did something about that. I'm asking for those of you in my district to please vote for me. And if you're not in my district, please tell everyone that is to vote for me. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to the court system. I think when we look at the down ballot part, once part of the nonpartisan thing, we all get a little befuddled, and especially with the judicial appointments and the judicial section, because we're all a little rusty on how the court system works and the hierarchy. We're pretty familiar with the Supreme Court and where that is, but then it's confusing. We invited Seema Patel. She is running for the 2nd District Court of Appeals, and she wasn't able to make it. I met her at a meet and greet a while back, a month or two ago, and told her she was really excited about coming to our group, and but she had a conflict in Lansing, a big fundraiser she had to be to. But she's coming next month, and she was going to send a video, wasn't able to get that put together, but she sent someone to speak on her behalf. And so I'm going to call Amanda Shelton up. It so happens that Amanda Shelton is our next candidate also that we're going to be talking about. Amanda is running for the Oakland County Circuit Court. And as I understand it, the Circuit Court has 3 divisions: the Civil Criminal Division, the Family Division, and the Business Division. And so this is the level of the court that Amanda Shelton is running for. And if you would like to come up, you can talk about your candidacy, and we're glad to have you here. And then you can also talk about Seema. Thank you.
So hi everybody. I'm Amanda Shelton, and I am running for Oakland County Circuit Court. So this is the court that sits at the 1200 building in Pontiac at Telegraph. This is the court that's going to hear all civil matters over $25,000. And it's the court that's going to handle divorce, custody, parenting time. Probate court's up there too, but that's actually not technically part of the circuit court. So I am running for a seat that is open because Judge Rayleigh Chabot is aging out. She cannot run again. And friends, I did have an opponent, but guess what? I don't have an opponent anymore. Yeah, she had some signature issues. You might have read about some of that in the news. So we're just going to leave that right there. But let me tell you just a little bit about me. I've been practicing for 18 years. I've been in private practice that entire time. I went to Wayne State, but let me back up for a minute. Anybody know anyone from Idaho? Anybody? Okay, well now you all do. So you're welcome. I grew up in Idaho. Yes, that really far, very red state over there. And I moved to Detroit, Michigan in 1997. And I lived on Cass Avenue. And friends, I don't know if you remember what Cass Avenue looked like in 1997. I came from a state with 1 freeway. Singular, yeah. Nobody told me that downtown Detroit was a spoke. Nobody told me that. Can't make 2 rights and get back to where you're going. So I learned that. Yes, I did. So I got my undergrad at Wayne State. And then I said, well, this is a pretty nice place. I'll stay here for law school as well. So I went to Wayne State Law School. Then from there, I did something I never thought I would do. I went to big law. Now, friends, when I went to law school, I was going to be a civil rights attorney. That's what I was going to do. But then a firm called Pepper Hamilton said, Amanda, why don't you come and look at our firm? And I was like, oh, not so sure about that. But I'm really glad I did, because I got a national practice out of that. I got litigation experience I would have not gotten otherwise. And most importantly, I got to do pro bono work, and I got to litigate with the ACLU for 3 years. So very, very, very proud of that work. We litigated a case called National Pride at Work versus Granholm, and that was a case that was attacking the marriage amendment that barred same-sex marriages from being recognized. And what the folks on the other side were trying to do with that is say, oh, by the way, that means you can't give health benefits. So we lost that case, but it paved the way. It paved the way for the DeBoer case, which of course was Dan and Nessel's case, went up to the 6th Circuit, and then of course the U.S. Supreme Court. So big law was not for me, and I left about 7 years in and started my own practice in Royal Oak called the Shelton and Dion Law Group. We are a litigation boutique, and what does that mean? We basically did whatever came in the door, right? People would be, Amanda, what type of lawyer are you? And I'd be like, What type of lawyer do you need? That's what I am. Yeah. But in that practice, we did everything from commercial litigation, and it ended up that we were pretty darn good family law lawyers. And the phone kept ringing for that. So we were actually the first firm to have a case where we got 3 legal parents recognized. So, bio mom, non-bio mom, sperm donor dad. For that family, that was the right decision, and those children are thriving. And we're very, very proud of that. So why am I doing this? Why am I running for Oakland County Circuit Court? A couple reasons. The first one is that representation matters. It really does. And I stand before you as the first openly gay woman to ever run for judge in our county. How is that possible? Right? It's 2022. We have 1.73 million people in our county. So, I share that because that lived experience matters. And I share that because I know what it's like to be told there's not a place at the table for you. And I know what it's like to say, like, hey, yeah, we exist. We've got something to say. We have something to talk about. I've represented all sorts of families, all different sizes, shapes, colors, with all sorts of different parents. I'm very excited that it is most likely that I am going to sit on the family division. So I will be handling custody, parenting time, divorce, and abuse and neglect. And so I can take the experiences that I've really honed in family law for the last 11 years of my practice and bring that to the bench. And friends, that's really a rarity because people who are often appointed to the bench start out in family law. They don't want to be there. They've never handled family law. They won't do divorce. They don't want to fight about if we're picking the kids up at 4 or we're picking them up at 6 or, are they going to play soccer or are they going to play softball? They don't want to do it. I want to do it. I want to be there. And I am super excited to take all the resources and knowledge that I have to do that job. So that's me. Thank you for having me. Thank you. But yet there's more. So now I get to talk about my friend Seema Patel. So Seema was appointed to the Court of Appeals about 7 months ago by our governor. And just about the minute she was appointed, some friends who will remain nameless decided that she was going to be the person to be picked off. Seema Patel is not the person that's going to be picked off, friends. I will tell you that. If you have not had the chance to meet her, she is dynamic. But the most important thing about Seema is that she's been doing appellate work for 18 years. She has been an appellate lawyer at a very high level for 18 years. She has appeared in the Court of Appeals. She has appeared in front of the Michigan Supreme Court. There is no one in this race that can touch her credentials. So she is someone that we must retain. Might I also add that she is the first woman of Indian descent to be on the court. The first one. So not only is she incredibly, thank you, friend, she would like that. Tell her that happened. Not only is she incredibly well-credentialed, she is the people's judge. She is the type of person that is not going to have the thumb on the scale. She is the jurist of highest quality. She looks at each fact pattern, she knows the law, and she works incredibly hard. So if you want a judge who's going to hear all the facts and isn't going to bring political bias or any other type of bias, you want Seema Patel. So I can't say enough about Seema. Her race, so you know, covers 3 counties. So her voting district is Oakland, Macomb, and Genesee. Yes, so that is her voting district. Now she hears cases from all across the state. But what we need to do is we need to communicate with our friends and our family in those 3 counties and make sure they flip their ballots, go down to the nonpartisan section, and here's our votes, friends. Here's who I'm suggesting. We've got Bernstein and Boulding for Supreme Court. Say it with me, Bernstein and Boulding. Yes. And we've got Seema Patel for Court of Appeals. And since you're there, you might as well vote for Amanda Shelton as well.
So, back to the State Board of Education. We are so excited that Pamela Pugh is here tonight because, as we mentioned before, our goal, one of the top priorities as a group we have chosen is public education. You're looking at a group of many people who've been in some form. In fact, let's do a hand. If you're currently involved as an employee or a parapro or any kind of thing with this public schools, or if you have been in the past, raise your hands. Okay. So you can kind of see where this group is coming from. So when we had a meeting back in June to decide what our priorities would be, we knew it was going to be education. And oh boy, is it going to be a rip-roar of an election. So we are stressing the importance of the State Board of Education. And I will also say before I introduce Pamela that I looked online today at a plead for us to get on the phone and start speaking at these state board meetings. And I'm going to make sure that everybody gets the information on how to do that, because you can speak as a citizen anytime on the phone, and they will let you. You don't have to go to Lansing to do that. And believe me, the other side is doing a lot of talking. And so we really need to do our part. So without further ado, I would love to present to you Pamela Pugh.
Good evening. What a good group. My goodness. I was with Christina in Howell, Michigan just a few days ago. And yesterday, you will be happy to know that Christina was with us, and we were at the Michigan Department of Education, and we did a press event. And then we had parents that called in and educators that called in to the State Board of Education meeting because they're tired. We are tired. We're tired of people taking the voice of the authentic voice of real parents who really want well for their children and taking that voice. And I'll have to be honest, these are people who are Betsy DeVos-backed people who are usurping and taking the voices of parents. And so yesterday we pushed back. And as I put on my Facebook, my social media post, the revolution may not be televised, but it started. It happened. It happened yesterday. And so we had parents from all over the state, and it only took a few of us, and we did. We began asking people to call in, let's push back. You know, we cannot continue to leave this vacuum. We can't. We cannot afford to do that because we have people who, on the backs of our educators and at exploiting our children unbelievably. They are running campaigns across this nation, and it's no different here in Michigan that they are doing the same to push a hate-mongering agenda. And there's so much good that we can be doing. You all know that our governor, after a lot of hard work, has passed a historical budget in this state. And after a global pandemic that has disrupted the education of our children, we have to make that budget work for us. This is a budget that we have been asking for decades. Unfortunately, we had a party and others who have left our educational system, and I don't need to tell you, you all know this. Not only but policies that hurt our educators, policies that allow our educators to or promote the disrespect and devaluing of the education field, policies and a lack of resources that have put our school funding at the bottom. And so finally, we are able to move up from that space. And so there's a lot of unfinished work that is left to do. And I've been on the board for 8 years. And in those 8 years, I've stood with parents. I've stood for educators. I've pushed for the respect of the education profession. and push back against the dismantling of our public education system. And so the State Board of Education, by Constitution, is responsible for education over the entire state. And a lot of people don't realize that. We're elected every 2 years. We're an 8-member board. Every 2 years, we're elected. So every 2 years, someone is elected. We have 8-year terms. And we are responsible for hiring the state superintendent of public schools. And currently that person is Dr. Michael Rice. And in a time like this, where you see, whether it's Oklahoma, Florida, Texas, so many just horrible agendas that would hurt our children, really hurt our educators. And we definitely need to make sure that we keep a board that definitely promotes an agenda that will assure equitable access to education for all children, and that will respect and value educators. And so we have a top 10 plan that you all can look at as well. We're looking at early childhood, literacy, equitable pay, making sure that we retain teachers as well as bringing teachers into the profession and all that goes along with that. So there's a lot of work that has to be done, a lot of work that we have unfinished, and so we want to continue to make sure that we have the people at the table. And then we also hope that we get a legislator that supports us in doing that as well. So if we have a Department of Education that's led by the State Board of Education, have a legislature and a governor who all have the education of our children first and foremost on their minds, and who know the value of public education. That is necessary, and so we need to make sure that that happens. And so I'm going to stop right there, and I don't know if there's any questions that anyone has. You all know everything, don't you? That's what I think of educators, I really do.
How partisan is the State Board of Education?
We are 6 Dem and two Republicans. And I will tell you, every meeting, well, let me say this first. When we've found ways to typically have found ways to work with our Republican counterparts. We really have. But up into these last 2 years, I will say, that has just totally fallen apart. And so we've seen resolutions, statements that they want us to pass, and when we don't pass them, that's when we get the ugliness that comes in. Some of the resolutions have called for, of course, banning educating about our true history. It has included putting teachers and librarians in jail for and I always say, it just puzzles me, it angers me that these are the same people that if you said that someone who plotted the kidnapping of our governor should go to jail, they would throw a fit. But they want to put librarians and educators in jail. But anyway, so it is a 6-2 split. The 6 are the good people. And we definitely want to keep it that way.
I didn't get to listen to all the meeting because I had to go to other things. Can you talk more about what happened with that FOIA?
Yes. So my board members and I FOIA'd school districts. And we wanted to see, what we were looking to see is if we asked traditional public education schools and PSAs for their records as far as how they're spending their money, what could we see? Because we continue to hear charter schools say that they have the same transparency, the same reporting requirements as traditional public schools. So what we found is, of course, that's not the case. So the data that we saw, some didn't respond, and those were the charters, and all of those had private EMOs, so education management companies, and then several of them had sweep contracts. So the sweep contracts means that, as far as we could see, was that they gave somebody some money, and we don't know what they did with the money. We don't know if the money made it to the classroom or if the money went into the pocket of the private organization. And I will have to tell you that Dan Quisenberry and one of the charterizer organizations, about 2 years ago, told me that I was a bold-faced liar and put this out in a publication because I said that the reporting is not equitable. We don't have the same transparency requirements for traditional public education as charter, and so that's basically what we showed. A taxpayer cannot tell where their dollars are going for these privately ran charter schools, and so we don't know if educators are, how they're getting paid in comparison to how the EMO is getting paid, or how the children are getting their fair share of the funding is what we saw. And we know that Michigan has one of the most, the greatest number and highest proliferation of privatized charter organizations. So, and it causes such an imbalance when these are public dollars. These are public dollars.
How many seats are up for grabs and how many candidates?
I'm so happy that you asked that. There are 2 seats that are up for grabs because Cassandra Albrecht, Cassandra's the reason why I'm on the board. She's currently serving as our president, and she's not running. She's served 2 sentences. No, I'm joking. She's served her 16 years, and but she's not going to run again, and she deserves that. Hate to see her go, but so Mitchell Robinson, who is amazing. He's amazing. He's an educator. He's an educator at, have you all had an opportunity to meet him? Okay, okay. So he's an educator at MSU, so he educates educators. He's a music educator. His wife is the music teacher of the year, and he's from Lansing. But he's amazing. He's a blogger. We were looking for someone to replace Mitchell, and so we had 2 people in mind. He was one. And so when we called and asked, I was so surprised that he said, I'll think about it. And he did. He didn't just say no and hang the phone up on me. He answered, and he answered the call. So he's an amazing guy. And so we're blessed to have him to want to fill this position. Thank you all for all that you do, and I hope that you're continuing to do, and just know that you have some fighters at the table for you who are very knowledgeable.
Thank you very much. Okay, now let's bring it close to home. As I said earlier, our goal this year was to really focus on education, and our local Board of Education elections is our top priority. On our ballot, when we get it, we will have 2 places to vote for Huron Valley Schools board members. In one section, there will be a 2-year term that you'll be voting for one person for. So you have the opportunity to vote for one person for a 2-year term. That one person that we hope gets elected is here tonight, and I'm going to start with her. And it's really a person that probably most of you already know. Last night she was introduced as pure Huron Valley Schools. True, and she is through and through. She's been a teacher, she's been an administrator, and been on the board for quite a few years, and this is Lindsay Cotter.
Thank you to Sherry. She's covered my career, 25 years in kindergarten, 10 as an administrator, and after retirement, I was first appointed to the board and then ran for 2 more successful elections. I finished after 9 years, and then about 3 years later, someone resigned from our board right in the middle of the bond and the millage that everybody greatly supported for us. So I was again reappointed. So that brings me now to why am I going to run for 2 more years? And I'm saying that because I don't think my job is finished. I often say that I'm one of the historians here in Huron Valley. I've been involved with Huron Valley Schools now for 50 years. So you might guess my age. But I do plan and I hope to run and be elected and serve for 2 more years in our community, because we're at a point right now that following the bond and following the millage, our schools are now becoming very safe and secure for our students. And moving forward, there's a lot of new instructional spaces and materials that have been put into these schools. So I need to see the end of this. I need to go for the ride now and see how this is going to affect our instruction, because we have a great teachers here in Huron Valley. And the one other thing that I'm staying aboard for, I want to make sure that we compensate our teachers for the jobs that they do with our kids. Huron Valley has always touted that we do the best we can for the bucks that we get, because we're low man on the totem pole. However, it's time now that we recognize our teachers for what they do with our students. So very shortly, that's why I'm running. My job's not finished. I want to see it through. So in 2 more years, I expect to see more changes here in Huron Valley. We've currently in the middle have just started our strategic planning program, and I'm hoping we get some guidance and direction out of this program as we move forward. So based on that, I'm in for 2 more years. I would certainly appreciate your support. I love Huron Valley. This has been my life. So I expect to go another 2 years. So thank you very much.
And the other part on the ballot for Huron Valley Schools Board of Education is a 6-year term. This is critically important, the 6-year term. They all are, but this particular cycle, we have a situation where we are concerned, very concerned, about some of the people that have decided to run for the Board of Education. And the good news is we have some really good candidates to introduce to you. And these 3 folk, or the two of the 3 are here tonight, and they're going to speak about their candidacy. The first one I'm going to introduce, because you already know her. You know, she's a member of our Indivisible group and has been from the very beginning, and we've all worked on her campaigns. And so I'd like to introduce again to you Denise Forrest.
Hello, everybody. As Sherry said, I know many of you, but I do see some new faces, so professional introduction. My name is Denise Forrest. I am running for the 6-year term of Huron Valley School Board. I am now completing my first term on the board, a 4-year term. And I don't think a lot of people know this, but as an art teacher, in my first couple of years teaching in Huron Valley, I taught at Kurtz and at Baker Elementary, teaching art. And Ms. Cotter was my principal for 2 years. So, and we're still friends. How about that? She truly is a great person, and she truly is the keeper of a lot of knowledge in the Valley. So for me, I was an art teacher for 20 plus years. Prior to that, I was a paraprofessional working with 4th and 5th graders, at-risk kids. So I pushed into the classroom. That was at Kurtz Elementary School. Went back, got my teaching certificate after my Bachelor of Fine Arts, and was hired as the art teacher in the Valley for many years. The last 4 years of my tenure, I was a full-time release union president here in Valley Education Association, and it was really there that I got a really in-depth knowledge of the system of public education. And as a system, it's a large system, and that's not a bad word. You know, we have to learn how to work within the system, and I learned to be very collaborative with our administrators, our central office team. You know, learned a ton about school finance, which is extremely important in public education. Pamela mentioned that, and Lindsay mentioned that. And when I came before Huron Valley, Indivisible, 2018, so six years ago, this is my 3rd campaign, hopefully my last, and I can serve 6 years on the board. But I came here stating, my focus and my vision for the Huron Valley School Board to keep school great. I retired in 2018 and immediately ran and won the board seat. At that time, my mission was to attract and retain teachers, to make sure our schools were very secure. This was after the Parkland shooting, and I insisted, as a union president, I pointed my finger to the current Board of Education. Lindsay was probably up there at the time. And I said, we need a social worker in every one of our elementary schools, like STAT. And that happened the following year. And so that again is still, we can't just stop there. We have to keep going with the mental health and the holistic education of our children. Social emotional learning has become weaponized as something that is less good. So, one of my opponents at first said, we don't need social workers in schools, and has changed his tune, and I don't really think he believes it, but, we do need to take care of our kids now more than ever after the last 2.5 years of COVID. And, I have been fighting on the front lines of education for a long time, mainly in funding. And as Pamela stated, Governor Whitmer really passed a blockbuster school aid budget. But again, we can't stop there. Huron Valley has been low funded for eons, and then now we have a $450 per pupil increase. And if you recall, during Snyder's first year, he stripped $470 from public education. That's roughly $2 billion, and he gave that to the tax relief for businesses. And so that was 11 years ago, and we're climbing out of that hole now. And Huron Valley has done a lot to, keep afloat. At one point, we did give the teachers raises, and that was my last year as a union president. There was a trigger, and so we managed to get all folks in our district 1.74% after like 8 years of static and pay cuts. Unions have kind of a bad name right now, and it's always thought of as a democratic kind of thing. Union, the MEA, the NEA at large, 30 to 40% of our teachers are something other than Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And that is really an important talking point when people are bashing teachers, saying that the reason we were remote for the last 2 years is because of those teachers and the union. And we took a lot of heat the last couple of years. We had to sit there as a board and pretty much take the whipping. And I will commend our Huron Valley School Board for being for staying the course and being a really high functional board. I think Lindsay Cotter and our other 5 board members really did a bang up job with our superintendent in getting us through COVID. And so thank you. So, I'm here to say that I want to continue staying the course and continue on the Huron Valley School Board. As Sherry mentioned, it's a very crowded field, and there are some great candidates. I think a lot of people decided to run because there's 3 candidates that are really, they're not going to be helpful. They have a lot of grievances, and they're not really here for the total child. They're just not. So I look forward to serving another 6 years, and I hope you will vote for me. And I have some lawn signs in the back. I also brought some for Ryan Dolly, who spoke at Indivisible here last month, and he also wanted me to give a plug for his Facebook page. It's Ryan Dolly for Huron Valley. And so if you want to amplify his messages on social media, that'd be greatly appreciated. I was hoping to not have to do a little Facebook page. I also ran against Matt Maddock, a state representative, for 2 years ago. And my main platform was public education and funding public education so we can, attain and attract and keep our teachers and all of our staff. So, my Facebook page should go live this weekend, Forest for HVS. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you for listening.
So I'd like to introduce Joseph Pilchowski. He is also running for the 6-year term, new to the game, and I'm looking forward to you hearing him.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I was a few minutes late. I was at the volleyball game at Milford. I'm happy to say that Oak Valley did beat Muir, because that's where my daughter plays. So, as far as me, you might not know me. You might see my last name and recognize it because I've been a part of this community for 40 years. I was born in Highland, raised in Highland, and I still live in Highland to this day. My parents moved out here in 1978. My brother went through all of Huron Valley schools. My sister went through Huron Valley schools, as did I. I met my wife, who lived next door to me in this community, and we live still in this community to this day. As far as who I am and what I'm about, I am a senior consultant at one of the largest tech companies in the world. You might have heard of it. It's called IBM. And what I do for a living is I walk into billion-dollar businesses, and I discover what they're doing, and I find the gaps between their expectations and what the reality of what's coming out the other end is. I tear that all down, and then I build it back up in the simplest fashion. And I get paid pretty well to do that, and I'm really proud of who I am and what I've accomplished. And I did all of this because of great educators along the way. I went to Spring Mills, I went to Highland Middle School, and at those schools, I was engaged by teachers who absolutely appreciated who I was up here and who I was right here. Sometimes I was in the principal's office, don't get me wrong, but the big takeaway is that they realized the raw material was there. They challenged me in new, interesting ways, and I see me running for the Board of Education as me repaying that debt. Me saying, you definitely invested in me, and I want to invest back with you. Now, I'll say that I was part of this community for 40-odd years, but how deep does that relationship go? For 10 years, my mother was the township supervisor of Highland. Best friends with Don Green, who is the supervisor of Milford. My roots here are extremely deep. And I was telling everybody last night, Don Green texted my mom and said, hey, is that your son who's running? And she was like, yes. And the first question out of his mouth was, is he conservative? I've trained my mother very well to answer this question. Talk to him. Because we're not going to say that in a nonpartisan race. What I bring to the table is a true nonpartisan viewpoint. And when I was invited to come speak to this, the first thing I asked is, tell me more about Indivisible. I went to the website and I said, look at all these platforms. None of this is political. This is all intelligent, reasonable, and accomplishable goals that have nothing to do with politics. Human rights are not politics. Gay rights are not politics. What we teach in the classroom isn't politics. We have an infrastructure that we built diligently of educators teaching educators to teach people how to teach. We need to trust in that. I'm a smart person, but it is not my job to go into the classroom and tell somebody who has an master's in education how to be an educator. My job as a parent is to be engaged, to ask questions. My job is to go to the classroom, volunteer my time, help out, and when I see teachers struggling, say, I'd like to pay for you to get more help. And that's what I think we can offer to this community, is an engagement layer with everybody that shows that we're actually listening. We heard earlier about 504 and EIP plans, right? And those plans themselves require, by law, a lot of attention. There's a lot of overhead there. And we see parents who know that. They recognize it. These are our kids that need attention. But we also need to fund that in the same sentence. And that's important. I see people saying online, and there was a mention of one person who is mentioning that teachers are doing things that are usually adjectives that you reserve for criminals. And then they say in the same sentence, but I want to work with teachers. No, you don't. You have no respect for teachers because you think you're better than them. And you're not. What you are is on a level playing field. If you want to engage with teachers, you have to engage with them at your level, not at theirs. I trust every educator in here that you did a great job during your career because I operate in good faith. I believe that the things you've done every day have been because you care. Teachers care about my kids. Teachers care about your kids. And for some of you, your grandkids. And I'm laughing because I was like, So the big takeaway of my platform is I truly believe that we can accomplish great things as a community because this community wants to be good. They want to do great things, and they want to support the next generation of people who are here. You can't go to a restaurant, let's say Charlie's, and not run into somebody who went to Milford High School. If you want to invest in your community, you get them a good education, so when they're at Charlie's, they do a great job because it's worth doing a great job. That place is awesome, by the way. So, yeah, I'm hungry too. I haven't eaten since noon. So the big takeaway of who I am is somebody who is really engaged in this town. I've been a part of it my whole life. Politically, I am not down the middle. I always believe in what is right for humanity, what is right for people, what is right for the loved ones that I have who are gay, lesbian, bisexual. I can't look them in the eye and say that I support them if I don't actually do the things that support them, which includes voting for the things that support them and defending their rights every day. So there are some people who say that if you have a background that has a rainbow on it, that should be out of schools. If you have a background that has a rainbow on it, good on you. That's absolutely fine by me. And the other side of it is really the other offensive stuff, the implying at all that teachers are running some sort of gambit or machine that is meant to take away from all of you and to take away from our community, take away from our identity. And I want to make it clear that what I want to run for is a defense of that, is to say, no, our teachers are fine. They're not trying to push some crazy mentality. They're not trying to hide history. They're trying to acknowledge history and to try to make it reasonable and valuable for the specific age group of the kid. And if you act in good faith, you'll see that that's what they're doing every day. So I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking to get 6 years so I can learn at least 2 years from that one and another 6 years from this one, because my background isn't in education. My background is in helping enormous companies realize value by communicating better and engaging better. And when you do that, you can create true value in a community. And I believe this community is the one that we can do some great things in. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope to earn your vote, and have a great night.
We don't endorse candidates as such, but formally. But what we do is recommend them to our members. And as a steering committee, we came together and we had to make some decisions about how we deal with the school board because we have quite a few good candidates that we're running, and you've heard some of them. We looked at the process that the Huron Valley Education Association used to vet the candidates, and they determined the 4 people that they would support as the Education Association. We know their process, we trust their process, and we have decided that also from a math standpoint, we don't want to divide the votes because it just does. There aren't that many votes out there. And what we really need to look at is that these candidates that we will get behind and we will try to get elected are candidates that we feel share our values, because that's what we are. We're not an arm of the Democratic Party. We are values driven. And so because of that, we want to make sure. And so we feel very confident after studying these candidates and looking at the endorsements of the HVEA that we will be recommending to all of you that you vote and you share the information about the following 4 candidates. Lindsay Cotter for the 2-year term, Denise Forrest for the 6-year term, Joseph Pilchowski for the 6-year term, and Ryan Dolly for the 6-year term. So let's applaud. Each of these individuals will make wonderful board members. Now, why are we doing this and why are we really getting behind these four? Because there is a slate of people out there that are running, that truly are running and want to tear down our public education system. And that's problematic. They are using the same playbook, however, and the same talking points that every other group like them, the Walled Lake has got a group of them, and all the neighboring districts are going through the same thing. And it's nationwide as well. So they're all coming from the same playbook, the same issues, the same things, and they are being backed by politicians. Now, the Board of Education election is nonpartisan. That is as it should be. Absolutely. And in our district, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, they like their schools. They're happy with the teachers here. They support public education. We cannot make this partisan because we must look at all these people that we know care about kids and care about public education. We have to reach out to them regardless of their party. Then that's very, very important in this election. Thanks, everybody.